He chose my birthday to humiliate me by giving me divorce papers in front of all the guests, but I got back at him in a way he'll never forget. The morning light slowly filled the spacious living room of my suburban Chicago home, playing on the polished surfaces. I, Emily Parker, stood by the window, looking at the neatly trimmed lawns of the neighboring houses. My thoughts fluttered like frightened birds. Today I turned 35, and it was supposed to be special, but an unsettling feeling settled inside me. I turned and glanced around the living room. Everything was perfectly prepared. Silver cutlery sparkled on the white tablecloth, crystal glasses stood in an impeccable row, and bouquets of fresh lilies created a festive atmosphere. It seemed the room was breathing with anticipation, but not me. My fingers nervously twirled the edge of my new burgundy silk dress, chosen specially for this day from a boutique on Michigan Avenue. The dress was perfect, as was everything around me. Impeccable hair, neat makeup, a slender figure. Yet a vague sense of impending change was growing inside. James, my husband of 10 years, had seemed increasingly distant. Our relationship felt like fragile porcelain, beautiful on the outside, but ready to crack at the slightest touch. I sensed it in every fiber of my being. The first guests began arriving around 6 in the evening. Friends, colleagues from the law firm, close acquaintances, all came with smiles and gifts. Laughter filled the living room, music played softly, waiters passed around snacks and drinks. I smiled and was polite, but my eyes remained cold. Michael, my longtime friend, was the first to notice something strange in my demeanor. "Everything okay, Em?" he asked softly. "Of course," I replied too quickly. "Just a bit tired." James arrived later than everyone, almost reluctantly. His gaze skimmed over the guests indifferently, and when it met mine, there was a flicker of what looked like pity or hidden resentment. "I have something for you," he said quietly, pulling an envelope from his jacket's inner pocket. My heart froze. Something in his tone, in the way he held the envelope, made me tense up inside. That envelope seemed more significant than a simple gift. Guests continued to have fun, unaware of the tension between us. The music played, glasses clinked, laughter rang out, and only I felt something snapping, like a tiny crack spreading across the fragile glass of our marital life. James extended the envelope. His fingers lightly touched my hand, a touch that felt cold and foreign. I slowly took the envelope, feeling an inexplicable premonition growing inside. Whatever it is, I thought, I'm ready. I can handle it. But deep down, I knew that what was inside the envelope would change everything forever. The festive atmosphere that had just been filled with laughter and warmth suddenly felt like thin ice, ready to crack under the weight of unspoken words. James gestured for me to step aside, away from the guests, whose gazes I felt on my back. My heart pounded so hard it seemed ready to burst. Each step was a struggle, as if I were walking towards an inevitable sentence. "Emily, we need to talk," he said in a quiet, almost lifeless voice. I nodded, trying to maintain composure. Inside me, a cocktail of fear, anger, and confusion boiled. "What's in this envelope?" I asked, though deep down, I already knew the answer. With trembling fingers, I unfolded the papers. Divorce documents. The words danced before my eyes. Dissolution of marriage, separate living, property dispute. James looked somewhere past me, as if ashamed of his actions. His gaze held neither compassion nor pain, only the cold indifference of a man who had already made up his mind. "Why? was all I could muster. "We've been strangers for a long time." He shrugged as if discussing the weather, not a shattered family. The humiliation burned worse than any fire. Years of life together flashed before my eyes. Our home in Lincoln Park, shared dreams, plans, joys, and sorrows, and all of it now reduced to a pile of papers. I clenched the documents tightly, as if trying to hold on to the remnants of my former life. Guests in the adjacent room continued celebrating my birthday, unaware of the tragedy unfolding at that very moment. "I didn't want to ruin your birthday," James continued, "but I felt it was honest to tell you now." Emotions overwhelmed me. Hurt, anger, despair. Yet through them, another feeling emerged, a strange calm turning into resolve. I understood that this was not the end, but just the beginning. "Fine," I replied coldly. "We'll discuss this later." James seemed surprised by my reaction. He expected tears, hysteria, begging, but got a hard, almost contemptuous look. As the guests began to leave, I smiled, accepting congratulations as if nothing had happened. But inside, a plan was already forming that would change everything. Silence fell over our penthouse after the last guest left. A ringing emptiness filled the space, leaving me alone with the divorce papers and my shaken thoughts. James sat in his favorite leather armchair, his look cold and detached. "I don't understand," I said quietly, smoothing the creased sheets of documents. "Why now? Why on my birthday?" James shrugged, showing complete indifference. "I just decided it's time to end our charade." Something broke inside me. Resentment, humiliation, and anger seethed, ready to burst out, but I restrained myself. Years of working in corporate law taught me to control my emotions, not to show weakness. "No," I thought. "I will not be a victim." Not today. James got up, intending to go to the bedroom, but I stopped him with a single phrase. "We're not done." My voice was calm but steely. James turned, for the first time noticing the change in my gaze. It was no longer the look of a frightened wife, but of a woman ready to defend herself. I spent the night studying documents, phone records, bank statements. Every detail, every little thing could be the key to understanding what was going on. I felt that behind the divorce lay something more than just a wish to part. In the morning, I called Michael, who had always been there in hard times. "I need your help," I said. "I want to know the truth." Michael didn't ask unnecessary questions. "What exactly do you need?" he asked. "Information," I replied. Complete and honest. There was a new firmness in my voice, never before present. The shock from the divorce news was gradually transforming into determination. I realized this was not the end, but the beginning of something new. I was no longer a victim of circumstances, but an active participant in my own life. James, leaving for work at his investment company that morning, didn't even say goodbye, but I no longer minded that. My mind was occupied with planning the next steps. I knew one thing: justice would be served, no matter the cost. My life, my rules, I thought, looking out the window at the morning Chicago skyline, which seemed full of new opportunities. Determination grew with every moment. I was ready to fight not just for property or reputation, but also for my dignity. I sat in the living room, mindlessly flipping through the pages of Chicago magazine, but my thoughts were far away. Since the day James served me divorce papers, a vague suspicion had been growing inside me. Something was off, and I felt it. Some secret he was carefully hiding. My iPhone gently chimed. A message from Michael. "Em, let's meet. There's something you should know." An hour later, we were sitting in a quiet cafe in Wicker Park. Michael looked worried, his brown eyes studying me carefully. "I found something curious about James's financial transactions," he began quietly, placing a printout of bank transactions in front of me. I scrutinized the figures and dates, feeling anxiety growing inside me. "Do you see these transfers?" Michael pointed to several amounts. "They don't look like regular expenses. Too regular and suspicious." A chill ran down my spine. I knew James for 15 years, and those expenses didn't fit into the familiar picture of our shared life. "Who is he transferring money to?" I asked, striving to keep my voice steady. "A woman named Christina," Michael replied, "and the amounts are increasing. At first there were small transfers, but over the last 6 months, substantial ones." I recalled a casual reference to that name. James had once mentioned a new financial consultant, but I didn't pay much attention then. "What do you know about Christina?" I asked. Michael hesitated, as if weighing each word. "She's known in certain circles as a woman who knows how to manipulate men. She specializes in wealthy partners." Every word of his resonated with pain in my heart. Betrayal, infidelity, or something more? "I need proof," I said firmly. "Real, documented proof." Michael nodded, understanding that I was not the kind of woman who would give up without a fight. "I'll keep digging," he promised. "But you need to be careful." Leaving the cafe, I felt a strange mix of emotions: anger, pain, but also incredible determination. James thought he crushed me with the divorce papers. He was gravely mistaken. I called my lawyer. It was time to act. The following days I spent in my apartment, surrounded by documents and printouts of bank statements. Sunlight streamed through the wide windows overlooking Lake Michigan, creating a stark contrast with the cold, calculative expression on my face. A phone call interrupted my thoughts. Michael, my silent ally, appeared on the phone screen. "Em, I found something." His voice sounded tense. Michael had discovered financial manipulations. Christina had a reputation for systematically exploiting wealthy men. Her scheme was polished to perfection. Initially charm, then manipulation, and finally financial gain. "She isn't just a mistress," Michael continued. "She's a professional manipulator." I listened attentively, taking notes on my laptop. Every word of his became an element of my strategy. I realized that James was just another puppet in Christina's hands. "It's my turn to pull the strings," I thought. The next several days I devoted to meticulous planning. I consulted with my lawyer, gathered evidence of James's financial misconduct, studied every detail of our joint bank accounts. Particularly interesting was the find of a power of attorney that James had issued to Christina. The document gave her almost unlimited access to our joint financial assets. I understood this was my main trump card. My plan was simple but flawless. I would collect all the evidence, expose the financial machinations, and secure the maximum settlement in the divorce. I would no longer be a passive side. In the evening, I called Michael. "I'm ready. It's time to act." "Be careful," Michael warned. "Christina is not one to give up easily." "Neither am I," I smiled. An unspoken promise of change hung in the air. I felt an internal strength filling me with each minute of planning. I was no longer a victim of circumstances. Now I was the main character of my own story. My gaze stopped on a photograph where James and I were happy a few years ago. It was only a memory. The future belonged to me alone. A call from attorney Sarah Johnson interrupted my concentration. "I have news." Sarah's voice sounded confident. "We found evidence of systematic misappropriation of funds from your joint accounts. James made a serious mistake." I listened attentively, taking notes. Sarah explained that the money transfer happened through a complex system of shell companies, but all trails led to Christina. "This is no longer just a divorce process," Sarah remarked. "There are signs of financial fraud here." That evening, I sat in my office, going through documents when there was a knock at the door. James stood on the doorstep. The first time in recent days he had come home before midnight. "We need to talk," he said, and I noticed that his usual confidence was gone. "Indeed we do," I replied calmly, gesturing him to enter. James nervously fiddled with his tie. "I heard you hired a private investigator." "And a financial auditor," I added. "Amazing things come up, don't they?" His face turned pale. "Emily, listen." "No, you listen," I interrupted him. "I know everything about Christina, the transfers, the shell companies, the power of attorney. Did you really think I would just sign the divorce papers and walk away?" James sank into an armchair as if deflated. She promised to help with the investments. Everything got out of control." "Oh, I'm sure she's very convincing." My voice was full of cold irony. "But now you have a choice. Either we settle this amicably, or I hand over the documents to the district attorney." James looked at me as if seeing me for the first time. His usual arrogance was gone, replaced by bewilderment and fear. "How much did she manage to extract?" I asked directly. "About $3 million, he confessed after a long pause. "I thought it was temporary investments." "In her next fraud?" I allowed myself a bitter smile. "You're not the first nor the last, James. She professionally ruins lives of people like you." He slumped in the chair, rubbing his temples. "What do you want?" "Justice," I replied. "First, you will revoke all powers of attorney. Second, we will freeze the joint accounts. Third, you will testify against Christina." "She will destroy me," he whispered. "No, James. She's already done that. Now I'm offering you a chance to fix it." At that moment, my phone buzzed. A message from Michael. "Christina is buying plane tickets. Looks like she's trying to leave the country." I showed the message to James. "Time to make a decision. Right now." He looked at the phone screen for a long time, then raised his eyes to me. "Okay," he said quietly. "I'll tell everything." "Calling Sarah." I took out my phone. "She'll prepare the necessary documents. And James, this is your last chance to do what's right." The next several hours passed in a haze. Sarah arrived with the documents, then the detective came. James told everything: dates, amounts, transfer schemes. With each word, I saw the empire of lies Christina had built collapse. By midnight, we had enough evidence to initiate a criminal case. Sarah worked with incredible efficiency, documenting every word from James. "We got it just in time," she said, gathering the papers. "Accounts are frozen. Christina won't be able to withdraw the remaining funds." I looked at James. He looked 10 years older. "You know," I told him, "I feel no joy in this happening. But you made this choice yourself." "I know," he replied quietly. "Forgive me." The following morning, the news exploded with headlines about a major financial scandal. Christina was arrested at the airport trying to fly to Dubai. Her scheme finally collapsed. Michael called me first. "You did it, Em. Everything will be different now." "Yes," I replied, looking at the rising sun through the window. Now, everything will be different. Several weeks later, a preliminary hearing was held. Christina stood trial, and it became clear that James was just one of her many victims. The scheme was indeed large-scale. I sat in the courtroom, watching the proceedings. Sarah was beside me, ready to protect my interests. James gave his testimony, and I saw how hard it was for him to publicly admit his mistakes. "Sometimes," Sarah whispered to me, "the hardest thing is finding the strength to start over." I knew she was right. Ahead lay a long road, the divorce process, financial recovery, a new life. But now, I was ready for this path. No longer a victim, but a victor. After the court session, I stepped outside, breathing in the fresh spring air. My phone vibrated again. This time my sister Lisa was calling. "I saw the news," she said. "How are you feeling?" "Better than expected," I replied. "You know, for the first time in a long time, I feel free." "You're amazing," pride echoed in her voice. "Maybe you should come to visit me for the weekend. A little distraction." The offer was tempting. The past few months had drained me, and the thought of a peaceful weekend at my sister's country house seemed almost heavenly. That evening, I sat in my study sorting through papers. Among them, I found an old photo of James and me, on a beach, happy, making plans for the future. Oddly, I didn't feel the usual pain, only a light sadness for what could have been. The phone rang. Michael. "More women have come forward with similar schemes," he informed. "Some are willing to testify. This story is going to get bigger than we thought." "Let it be," I answered. "The more people know the truth, the less chance she can repeat it." The next day, I made a decision I had long postponed. Started looking for a new apartment. This house held too many memories, and I needed to move on. The search for a new apartment turned out to be an unexpectedly therapeutic exercise. Each viewing felt like a little step towards a new life. After a week of searching, I found the perfect choice. A bright studio in an old part of the city with a view of the park and high ceilings. "Here, I can start anew," I told myself, standing in the middle of the empty room. In the evening, Sarah called with news about the case. "Christina is trying to make a deal with the prosecution," she reported, offering to turn in her accomplices in exchange for a reduced sentence. She had accomplices. I felt a chill run down my spine. "A whole network. It seems this is an international scam. The FBI is interested in the case." I sat down on the sofa, trying to comprehend the scale of what I heard. The crime scale was much greater than we initially assumed. The next day, James came by to pick up his final belongings. He looked haggard but more composed than in recent weeks. "I'm selling the company," he said. "Starting anew, maybe in another city." "That's the right decision," I replied, handing him a box with his books. "You know," he paused at the door, "I really loved you. I just lost myself along the way." "I know, James. I hope you find your way back." After James left, I began packing my things for the move. Every photo, book, and trinket brought back memories. Some I decided to leave behind. Others I carefully packed into boxes. The phone rang. My editor's name appeared on the screen. "Emily, I read about your case," Rachel said without preamble. "I want to offer you to write an article about it. I think your story could help other women." I thought for a moment. The idea seemed daunting, yet also right. "Give me a few days to think," I replied. In the evening, Lisa came to help with packing. We sat on the floor among boxes, drinking wine and talking about the future. "You know," my sister said, looking at the bare walls, "sometimes you have to lose everything to find yourself." At that moment, a message from Sarah came through. "There's an important meeting in the prosecutor's office tomorrow. Looks like Christina is ready to talk." I showed the message to Lisa. "Will you go?" she asked. "Yes," I replied firmly. "I want to hear the whole truth." In the morning, I arrived at the prosecutor's office. Investigators, lawyers, and FBI representatives were already gathered in the meeting room. Christina was brought in under escort. She looked pale but still held herself with her usual arrogance. Her eyes met mine for a moment, and I saw something like respect in them. Perhaps she didn't expect someone could dismantle her perfect scheme. "Miss Brooks is ready to give a full testimony," her lawyer announced. For the next 3 hours, I listened to the unfolding story of years-long fraud. Christina methodically described her scheme, how she chose her victims, gained their trust, and manipulated people and their money. "James was the perfect target," she said emotionlessly. "Successful, lonely, craving recognition. I didn't expect his wife to be so perceptive." I sat silently, taking notes in my notepad. The material for the article was coming together by itself. After the meeting, Michael caught up with me in the corridor. "Are you okay?" he asked with concern. "Yes," I replied. "Now I definitely know what I will write about." A month later, my article appeared in a major national publication. "Anatomy of Deceit: How I Helped Uncover an International Fraud Scheme," read the headline. The phone buzzed with calls from other victims and journalists. "Your story has already helped 3 women uncover similar schemes," Sarah reported. "They have contacted the police." The court sentenced Christina to 12 years of imprisonment and full confiscation of property. Her accomplices received various sentences. James, considering his cooperation with the investigation, was given a suspended sentence. In my new apartment, I finally felt at home. Bright walls, favorite books on the shelves, and most importantly, no ghosts of the past. An orchid bloomed on the windowsill, a housewarming gift from Lisa. One night, sitting in my favorite chair by the window, I reread the diary I kept during the investigation. On the last page appeared a new entry. "Sometimes you have to go through darkness to see the light. This story taught me to trust my intuition, not to fear the truth, and to believe in justice. But most importantly, it taught me to believe in myself." I closed the diary and smiled. A new day was beginning outside the window. Did you like the story? Write your opinion in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next interesting story. See you tomorrow.